is
Morning.
March 28th, 2014, and the Cowboy's here to talk again. And he's um, he's kind of going to lead on to a automated testing series. So we'll see how this goes, right?
Morning.
So here's the
Glad.
Cowboy. Andy, welcome back.
Yeah, I have not been absent, but I have not been out there much, and I apologize for that. But I've been a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of things that need to be done, and some of the things I've been trying to do and get things moving. Um, so what I want to kind of go through is a couple of things that the programming in WinDev and in WebDev and in mobile has provided us, but I don't think everybody's using it yet. Okay, I really don't. And part of that is error management. Turn that off. We all write our if statements and if else error, and we do an H error, and we do an error info, and we do all this good stuff that we think that we need to have, and we're kind of missing the boat. Part of the things that I'll run into is how do you capture when you give someone your program the GPF, the crash, something went wrong, total crashes on your programs, things like that. And there is two methods to do that in WinDev that I think that everybody should explore. And I'm going to show you the way I did it in order to make it work for me and what happens when that occurs. Now, those that have been around for a while know that Pete and I kind of put together a Project Pro thing. And what I did was, and what it does is keeps up with tasks and errors and problems and stuff like this. And what I did was I wrote a web service for that. And the web service then can receive either suggestions, feature sets that people want, or errors in there. And those that have come from our prior lifestyle all remember the GPF report writer that has been out there for a long time to kind of send you when something crashes of possibly why it crashes. I'm a little bit more into that. So what I did to start this whole thing, and this is where things are coming in, and this is where this whole thing is started. There's really two phases. One is trapping all of your errors and trapping all of your items that you use and things that happen in your program when you finally release it to your customer base or release it to the people that's using your software, and being able to manage that. Okay, that's the two things. Obviously, I'm big time into the classes and everything, and one of the classes that we built was an error handling class. This error handling class has got a couple, two, three things with it that we do. One of them is the error itself. And this comes in here, and what we do is we send on everything that we've got an error. We got a title of the error. We got the error message. I got a default error level 2, which means store it, not really do anything else, and whether I want to display it or not for the user. And in here, I have set a property of the program type that I have. Okay, so I can set it up for a service. I can set it up for a program. I can set it up for a web service. I can set it up for a web program. Whatever I want it to, come in here and write certain things. Now, there's a couple things that WinDev allows you to do. One, it allows you to override or overload their own procedures, and that's basically what we're doing here. So let's go over a little bit of the program one, which is what I'm using right now. It's a WinDev program. There's a couple things here as you can see. One is unit testing. If that's set to 2, I do a test write result, and we're going to get into that in the second phase of this conversation this morning. We do that. Also, if I got the trace turned on, I will actually trace it to the screen if that's turned on. Normally, you can see now, wait a minute, I've got a trace here and a trace here. What's the difference between the two? That trace locally This is an overloaded trace of the WinDev language trace. All I have to do is call it the same name, give it a different parameter, and we're off and rocking and rolling. The second thing in here is we got the error log, which is where we're logging the errors. Now, here's the key point about this. The error log, where is it going? Well, most people, and Pete does this, he has a log file locally on their machine that he keeps all the logs and stuff in of anything that went wrong. What I'm doing is a little different. I'm using the web service to actually send every bit of the problem to me remotely, directly to my Project Pro management. Now, the web service, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have Project Pro to do anything with it. All you need to be able to do is make you a web service that will get this information and give it to you in a file. So literally, I'll get, when somebody's testing or something, I'll get their errors and stuff, and I'll see what they're doing, and I'll say, okay, well, that's wrong. Let me go fix that. Let me do this, and I'll be able to give them updates and things like that all the time. Now, this is running automatically. This will, once release is out there, somebody has another issue or something like that, somebody's doing something, I'm going to get this no matter what. This is my GPF. This is errors in SQL statements for whatever reason. This is GPF errors. This is whatever I need it to be. And what it accomplishes is that I have, no matter how many users is on the system, I've got a good control of anything that's going on. Now, the second part about this process is the trace, which is the one thing I wanted to talk about also. The trace itself is a local global procedure, and all it does is a couple things. One, if I have debug turned on, that will then trace it to the screen. If it's not turned on, it just falls through and doesn't do anything. Then I also have another equate called auto debug trace, which writes that out as test results. Okay? And then writing it out as a test result, again, is for that automated debugging or automated testing is what it's for, and we'll get into that here in just a few minutes. So how do we put this all together? Well, I've got a couple, 2 or 3 things down in my error management global section. I have error handling, exception handling, I got a hyper error, and I got trace. We're looking at trace right now. Hyper error is something that I pulled out and I'm starting to implement now. This actually will list every hyperfile error that can happen. This is all of their errors. And what I'm doing with it is again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to take this right here, this text right here, and I'm going to send that to my XML as an error. So that way I say, well, why did he have an why this not allowed on an automatic identifier or distinct browse allowed on key, or, some of these errors that we should, index file not found, things like this. And I said, well, why are they having problems? Well, they got a data corruption or they got something else, and I need to go ahead and preemptively call them or even fix it on the fly if I need to. Remotely if I have a problem. That's what I'm doing here. And you use the H on error in the WinDev language to initiate this. The other ones I have is exception handle and error handle. Well, there's 2 different things that you can run into and you can deal with. In exception handle, this is for exceptions in the whole program. I really blew it up. Something really happened, GPS side. I got 2 things. If I'm testing it, I'm testing it locally. I'm going to trace it, but I want to know what the exception info is. I don't want to send it myself. That's silly. I'm here. I'm using the go button to trace it. If not, I'm going to say, hey, I got an exception, and I'm going to send the exception info, the entire thing, to my web service. Tell the person that an error occurred in the program and the information has been sent to support, and I'm going to restart the program, and then I restart the program. The last thing is you have to exception enable again. This is my GPF. So if something happens that they just crash the entire program, may not know where, may not know how, what this is going to do is trap that. It's going to tell the user, okay, something really ugly happened to you. We're apologizing for that. And then I'm going to restart the program for you. That's what it does. The error handling is for just simple errors. There's a problem, they did something wrong, things like that. But I need to kind of find out why they did it one way or another. So I basically wrote the same thing, only it's an error info instead. This would be something that wouldn't cause the entire program to crash, but still a significant problem. And the same thing in here is if I'm in test mode, which is the go button, I just want to know what the error is because I'm doing my testing instead. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing my testing. And then the auto debug trace is there. Now, let's kind of go how this all gets put together. And I'm actually going to give that error management global to Arnold to put up on the site so you can download it and just put it into your programs and use it if you want to. It doesn't matter to me. You won't be able to use this piece of it, the CCSFB, so you'll have to modify that, but you can use the rest of it. Inside my element code for this program, I've got a couple, 2, 3 things that I put in here. Number one is in test mode, I set my debug equal, it should be true, actually. We got it turned off for the moment. We set that to true. Also, you can see when exception, I've got exception handle here. That's to get anything in the global area, anything that may happen in this area. Init program sets up, and I've got a screen deal that says, okay, do I turn on the debug? Do I turn on the testing or not? And that's right here in the WinLogon. You can see this right here, save trace. The code tells it what I'm going to do. I set if the debug is true, I turn the auto debug trace on. I set my unit testing to true, and I debug start recording. Okay? All right. So far, what I've done is I've set up all the pieces to be able to trap errors and be able to actually keystroke by keystroke watch the end user and how they're doing things. And you're saying, right, okay, we got all this stuff together now, what are we going to do with it? Fairly simple. Any kind of error, I just go straight to here, to the exception management, when exception in the program and error by the program. Both of them are here. So what I'm going to do is say, I'm going to tell this thing to run in my error management, the exception handling. So anytime this thing blows up, it's going to go straight there. And if there's a non-fatal error, I'm going to tell it to go do the error handling. All right? Now, do you need to do this on every code line you have? No, I'm not going to do it on this line of code because that's not useful. But if I come into another window, and let me get one here that's kind of more useful here, and I'll show you several of them. Anytime that I'm doing, you can see that I've got exception handle here at the top. I'm doing it in init, and what happens is that exception will cover whatever's in the init also. So if anything exceptionalizes in there or crashes in there. But you can see what I've got here. I've got some thread states. I've got some execute processes, list displays, all kinds of things that are in here that are possibly could cause issues. And I can turn on my exception by program and say, okay, if anything happens in here, I want to go to the exception handle. And if there's any error, I want to then go and run the error handling. Okay? So now as the user is using this program, if anything happens on the thread, anything happens on loading the local array, anything happens on a fetch data from the pharmacy, or whatever I'm calling, I'm going to know that. I'm going to get a notification through the, through a web service is what I'm going to do. Okay? Any questions about this so far? Has anybody got any questions about this so far? Let's go for it, because I'm kind of going to stop here and go into the next phase now. The cool thing about this is I don't have to have a lot of error handling in my code itself, Because in essence, that's what I'm doing up here. I'm trapping all of the errors there. I'll let myself know it. And I don't necessarily have to have any errors here. Now, I may do that if it's just you forgot to enter in this piece and I want to show you on screen, you got to re-enter it. That's a different kind of error. These are more programming errors. Yeah.
So this stuff you turn on during your your alpha testing, basically, or do you have it?
And beta, I'll leave it on there. It's just there.
So
Now,
your end users, it actually starts recording stuff for you?
I have the recording is optional, but I require that during my alpha and beta testing that it's turned on, and I'm going to tell you why here pretty soon. The recording is, well, let's kind of back up the truck. We're programmers. We suck at testing. It's as simple as that. We're going to test it correctly 99% of the time. And then the minute we give it to an end user, what happens? They figure out a new way to screw it up. And then when you say, well, how did you do that? They say, well, I don't know. I just clicked around on the screen and this happened. And you've got no clue whatsoever what they did. I don't think there's maybe 3% of all the users out there that could actually give you the steps exactly of how they screwed something up. And we've all been through this. Every one of us. What WinDev has done has been very, very cool little feature. They give you an automated testing. They give you the ability to automated test. The problem with that is none of us, or very few of us, have explored it. Very few of us have even thought about using it. And even less have decided that we are going to use it and how we're going to use it. Well, what I'm doing here is given an easy way to use it, and I can take their testing and put it into my automated testing. So there's two phases. I release the product for beta testing, and I throw it out there, and I turn on the tracing at that point. So now it's doing everything, and then when they say, okay, I had it blow up, fine. I need one file out of there. You don't need to tell me what you were doing if you don't want to, or if you can't figure it out, that's fine, but I need one file out of there. And the file I need, and I'm fixing to show you guys the file, is the trace file. And the trace file is these right here, the WSCTs. Okay? And what those are, the actual keystrokes and items that happen. Now, because of the error handling routines, guys, because of the error handling routines, I've got the error. I've actually got the error that happened. I just don't know how they did it. Okay? So how did they manage to get in a bad select statement, or how did they manage to do that, or how did they manage to cause that error to happen? I've got to know the steps. Well, since I recorded it, I can actually import this file to me that I'm going to tell them to send me via email or Skype, and I'm going to import it, and I'm going to make it part of my test plan. How does this work? Well, initially during beta testing, you're going to do a lot of this, and you're going to have your test plan. You're going to be putting it in here, and every time you make a change, you're going to run it through before you compile, and you're going to say, okay, everything runs. Now, you release the product. Everybody has the product, they're using it, everybody's happy, and you say, well, we need new feature ABC. So now you throw in new feature ABC, and you turn it back on for somebody to test the beta of feature ABC. Well, it caused you, because of your new feature, you caused yourself 5 or 6 regression errors. How do you know you have the regression errors? Pretty soon, it's real easy because you left these in your original test plan. So your changes you did for the new feature, these would error out. You would have the errors there you're looking for saying, hey, this didn't work. So now you already know your regression errors before you ever release your beta of the next feature. You let it run on its own. They got little robots to run the thing. You go off, ride your Harley like I do, let it do its thing. When you come back, you got a report saying, hey, these all worked, these failed. That's what happens. Okay? So when you import these, what do you get? You get a very simple script of stuff, and I'm going to show it to you here, of what they're doing, what they emulated the mouse to do, what they entered in. These are the entering, the inputs, and however many things they did. So it'll be a big, long list. Now, granted, you may want to clean it up some because they probably got a bunch of stuff into it. But, you know, initially what you want is you're going to get this test. You're going to get this list of items that happened. And this is actually the import from one of those items there, one of those files. So now I'm going to leave this here. And each time I compile the program, it's going to ask, did you run your test? You say, yeah, I ran it, or no, I didn't. And do you want to run your test? And you say, yes. It's going to run all the tests for you before the compile happens. And if it fails, it's going to tell you, hey, I failed. Now, what the key part that I've been working on this is the fact is that I don't have to write these lines of code. That's what the test write results are for. That's what the debug start recordings for. That's what the the errors and stuff are for. And all I have to do is, as I write my normal code, I may have to throw in one or two things in there to say, okay, if we are debugging, I want it to throw this error out. That's why the trace down here has the test write results in it. Because what I'm doing there is, as it's tracing through, saying I called this piece, I called this piece, I called this piece, I called this piece, I get every one of those messages, every one of those traces that I put into my system, and I can actually literally follow through step by step, just as if I was sitting in front of the computer, hitting the go button and hitting the step-by-step button, and I can see exactly what's going on if I run the test automatically. And I can see, I can trace down and say, that did not work right. Okay? Now it's all semi-automated. My worst case scenario for something that I may want to do is come in here to one of my code areas, and you can see where I've got, if pharmacy rec is empty is true, then go fetch the data. Well, I can say else test write results. But I see I wouldn't do that. I'd actually do trace, open parentheses, and I want the I want to do it in IW because I want to know where I'm at. I want to know the window I'm at. No records in pharmacy. Okay. Now, if I'm supposed to have records in pharmacy, absolutely supposed to have records in pharmacy, you can actually physically write it in there. Write results. Let's see, TW. Let me get it right. No, it's not T. Just a second here. Yeah, test write results. Test write results. Now here's the difference. I change it to an error instead. Should have pharmacy. Okay. Now what I've got there now is that when I'm running my test program and I'm running through my information, what's going to happen is going to write out the results and say this failed, because I'm expecting that I'm supposed to have data right here. If I don't have data right here, something happened. Okay, something happened entirely. Now here's the key part about this. I wouldn't necessarily put it right here. I would put it inside my fetch. You can see I got the error handling class here, and I would say at this point, if I don't have any records here, if my array is empty, then I'm going to write it out and say there's an error there. Okay, And this is what I'm doing. So to me, the test right results is probably smarter to put in than putting in info, you didn't have any data. Because that's not helping me. I want to help me, on a larger program to handle it and write it out automatically. I've already got the exception and I've got the error calls. The only thing I'm adding right now is my automated testing, what I'm going to do. Okay? Now, if your automated testing is not running, this doesn't do anything at all. It just ignores the process you got there and continues on. Nothing happens. Okay? So you can actually walk through as you're writing your code, writing out the certain things. I don't have to look for the errors and stuff because I'm handling that up here. I've got no problem with that. So the only thing I'm actually writing out is okay, if they say we should always have pharmacy data no matter what, then I should have an error there in my automated testing to say, hey, you're supposed to have data here. You shouldn't have an empty file. Okay? All right. So let's see what we do. Now, to get a little bit further information on this, there is an example of a unit test that they provide. This is in your examples program, which they've got a unit test here, and it's more geared towards the high profile and straightforward for those that don't use classes. And it's got all the information for putting in the username, addresses, things like this, and then it says, here is, if I found an address equals fault on this, then I've got an error. Database was not correct. And then I write out the test right results, and if I delete and the test is deleted, then we're good to go there. Okay? So this is kind of where I started from. But like them, as programmers, they didn't really expand upon this much. So I'm really trying to, expand upon this more, and that's why we're going to have a series of these, and we're going to show the results. Now, what happens here is when we run this, and I've got one set up to, let's see, that's the one. When I got this run right here, all I have to do is run the procedure. I can either set up a new set test, new group of tests. I can save a new test. I can run this test, and that's what I'm going to do. And what it does is it just literally pops up the screen. I think I may have to move it over here. It's going to pop up the screen. It's going to enter a few things, and it's going to go away. We're done with it. Someday. Oh, I got to check it out. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Now, as I move forward with this and get fully into doing the whole thing, we'll certainly show on the next one how to import and how to clean up the imported testing environment when it comes back from the end user, because that's the next phase I'm getting into, is that the young lady that's going to be a beta tester is going to be going after it, and that's what they're going to be doing is that. It popped up on the other screen, but it come back and you see the test log on was successfully run, is what it was. Let's see if I can get it to come over here instead, because it pops up in the wrong screen, and I'll try to see if I can get it over here. Hang on just a second. There. Okay, so now we can see it. And that test, maybe it'll pop up this time. So let's run it. Okay, there it is. So you can see it filling in the information. It's done. Button click, you're finished. All finished. Now, the key part about this is that eventually there is going to be tests here on every screen in this system. Every screen, every procedure, everything that needs to run. And 90% of those tests will be provided to me from the end user. I may have to clean it up one way or another, but it's going to be provided to me from the end user. And where that comes from, literally, is turning on this debug start recording. That gets those files. Then you grab those files and you import it in. and you end up with the code here of it doing what it was supposed to. And that's kind of the introduction of this whole thing. Anybody got any questions or thoughts about where we're going with this and what we're going to be teaching? Because we'll be using this on our tables, we'll be using this for data entry, add, change, delete, the whole 9 yards. And we'll show you how it works through the whole thing over the next few weeks before the DevCon, the Developers Conference. And when we do the Developers Conference, this is what I'll be teaching. This is too much. Chris, I'm going to tell you, it's a lot easier than you think. I'll be glad to help anybody get started getting all the stuff put together. As far as, capturing your errors and things like that to do something with them, as well as capturing the debug testing. I'll be glad to help anybody out there to do that. It's really not that difficult. Okay? But it is damn cool because it really kind of, everybody's probably gone through the deal is that you made a quick fix, you threw it up there, and all of a sudden you broke 2 or 3 other things, and the end users are looking at you like you're freaking insane because you can't keep anything working right. And this solves that problem. So I'm really, really glad that they do it. I am absolutely ecstatic that it happens and that it's useful to us. Now, the biggest thing is making sure that everybody kind of understands how it works. Okay?
And use it.
So, and use it. That's really it in a nutshell. So, to simplify it, just to make it as simple as possible, there are basically 3 things that you need. Okay? And I'm going to simplify this whole thing. One is you need a global, get the code here. You need your global procedures to have an error handling, exception handling, and a trace. That's the 3 you need. In each one of them, you need to have the ability to do a test right result. Okay? Error handling, exception handling, test right result, the error, as you see here. That's what that does. The last thing, once you've done all that, is when they log on, give them the ability, which I've got via checkbox right here, to turn on the debug recording. That's it. That's the minimum you've got to do. The rest of it is going through wherever you got code and going ahead and telling it to use the error handling and telling it to go to the error handling there or the exception handling. Once you've done that, you're going down this path. You're already heading down this path. The next step is importing what you got and using it as part of your test plan. Okay? Yeah, the recording is cool, Chris. Absolutely great. Because it allows them, it's like everybody, program works fine right up until you give it to the first user. And they found a new, weird, and wonderful way to screw things up. This is one way to keep that from happening. This is one way to find out, anyway, and eliminate the problems.
Yeah, after the first month having something on site, you know which users just automatically turn on the trace for.
Yeah, username this user, turn on trace automatically. That's true. You're absolutely correct. But and the thing about it is that
always that one user that can figure it out how to break it.
Right, and when we're talking about that error, on the web service, here's some of that right here. These are some of the errors I've gotten back where somebody did a bad select statement, things like this. And what this is the developer, me making tests and running it in, and it's giving me those problems, okay? And so I've got these pieces here, and these are things that are coming back from the testing. So I got it on my error. I just fixed the problem and give them a new patch, and I'm done with it. I don't have to mess with it no more. Now, you can do that just fairly simply, just have it dump in a database and have it list up all your error bugs and handle it. Some people use fog bugs. Terry and them use fog bugs. Do the same thing. Use the web service to insert into fog bugs. If you use some of these other third-party guys out there, a lot of them have REST APIs or something like that to insert errors and bugs and stuff in, then you use the web service to do that. And then your programs are talking to you. This is, to me, this is the coolest thing I've ever had to deal with in all the years of programming, is to actually have the programs out there at the end users talking to me about how they screwed up the program.
You know what, you're saying that they screwed up, but really it's something maybe we didn't cover, you know, because...
Well, you're correct. You're correct, but I have, and here's one thing that's happened before, and especially in the insurance industry that's happened to me. Okay, they have percentages of distribution. In other words, an 80-20 plan for an insurance company. Okay, well, they're supposed to put an 80-20 plan. It defaults as 80-20, and then somehow they manage to figure out a way to override it, and it's wrong. So now all of your billing is wrong. So how do you figure out where they come to you and say, hey, I just printed this billing for this guy, and it's all wrong? Well, how did you manage that? I don't know. Okay, so now you grab his trace and you walk through the program, basically step by step, how he did it. And you say, well, why did you change this to 90-10 when it was defaulted to 80-20? What authorization was that? Oh, well, Joe said I could do that. Okay, so your report isn't wrong. It's actually right because you changed the values to 90-10. Oh, yeah, that's right. See what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe he shouldn't have that right.
Well, you know, I agree. I agree, but what we're talking about here is you've just proved that you did it right and he screwed up.
Oh, what you're saying is their setup or their entry is
yeah.
messing things up.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah.
I mean, a lot of our programs have a lot of different setups or configuration.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, once you've released it out of beta, we all know we shouldn't get errors coming back, GPF errors and things like that coming back. It doesn't say that doesn't happen on occasion, but we really shouldn't be getting them. So the primary part of this, or the debug recording and things like this, what is it used for? Number one, it's used for my alpha and beta testing to find out what things I need to correct, what things are deal. It's going, these are the business rules. Is the programming following the business rules as I coded it? You know, things like this. So you're going through your alpha and your beta and doing things like this. Then where it comes back is regression testing. That's the other key part about this, is all your regression testing. You put in a new feature, you make 2 changes to a report, or somebody says, listen, you know, we need to expand or multiply this by 12 instead of 8. So now all of a sudden you're going to get back here that a lot of the fields aren't big enough to hold the value. It's turned into asterisks instead. You're going to get that because you're going to run this thing and it's going to tell you that. Now you've got all your regression testing taken care of.
So where's the unit
because
testing?
You've done these scenarios.
Where's all your unit testing scenarios? It's all built in the code?
It's all built everywhere? In, well, not into this code. It's built in to do it, but there is a
app to do that?
Yeah, there's a test. There's a file that goes with it. And that file holds all this, and it's set on there. It doesn't really go out to the client. It just stayed on there locally. And so when you do a project and you say generate, one of the first things that it's going to do is, it's part of your build. You tell it you want to compile the thing, and you tell it what you want to test. Okay. The second thing is, and I'll show you that here in just a second as soon as this thing finishes, because I'll kill it before it gets done, is that you can have the robot do it. Okay. In version 18, they came out with a robot that allows things to work in the background. So literally, I can schedule it to do a compile on Friday night, and if everything works right, I can actually have the entire install done. I can actually have the install done. Okay, you can see here's the test. This was the test of the automated test, and then I can kill it. But see, if I go into I go into automated tests up here. Let it catch up to me. See, I can start the robot. When I start the test robot, what the test robot does is it comes up for running a tool. And we're going to get into this. And it has every one of them. And I can tell it to run certain parts of it. I can tell it to run the entire things. I can tell it to record a new seminar, a new recording for me. But basically, I can have this entire thing run through the entire process and know what's going on.
Oh, that's sweet, man.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to get into this, too, as we go. As this gets larger and larger, we'll get into this where basically there is another process of this that I did go over at one time early on, where we were setting up steps on how we want things done. Do this, do this, do this. I know there are people that have used, I forgot what the name of the program was, that would compile, then put it all in a package, and actually you could use Setup Builder with it to generate
cruise control.
Okay, yeah, by several different names. Anyway, this product, I could do exactly the same thing. I could tell it to go get the deal and run Setup Builder and compile Setup Builder.
Well, Build Automator or Cruise Control.
Build Automator is the one we used to use. Yeah. Okay, but this other step-by-step process, I could do exactly the same thing. So by the time we get done with this entire deal, I'll be showing how that works and actually run through the entire process. And basically what happens is that when you're ready to do it, you tell it, okay, kick it off, go off and do something else. When you come back, you either have the set of errors you got to fix, or you have a releasable executable.
Well, the trick on this is to build your tests as you go before you write your code, and so you always have it, right?
Yeah. You want to
call test-driven development.
That's correct. And the neat part about what I'm doing here, because of the trace program and stuff, is that literally I'm writing out the things as I hit the go button. I know where things are going to go straight from the go button without me having to do a lot.
Yeah.
Now, I do have to write in certain.
As you add features, because you already have those tests, and that test now fails because of something you've added to the screen.
Right.
Instead of starting from scratch, you're just editing that test to cover the new features, and now testing again. Like you said, you're going to find your regressions, you're going to test your new feature, but you're not having to recreate the wheel every time.
That's right.
Nope. That's why you want to start from the beginning, because then it's harder to go back later.
It's much harder once you got the program running, but it's well worth the time. I'm going to tell everybody it's well worth the time. Okay? It really is well worth the time. And if you're a single developer or small shop or something like this, to me, it's almost mandatory.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have time to go test every thing again.
Right. And then let's go to the other part. We all know that not everybody is at the same skill levels in programming. It's good to have it for larger shops where you got multiple programmers as well, because then you can pick up when somebody, how come you didn't look at that report when you put in that piece? Or how come you didn't look at this other screen when you put in that piece over there? It broke. I already know.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, you can actually configure it where it will not allow something to be checked in if it hasn't been tested, doesn't it? Isn't that a feature of the SCM?
Yes, it is.
So, for your junior programmers, you can actually enforce, hey, if you haven't tested this, it doesn't go in.
If you don't have a test plan for it, you can't go in. And you can see I can run it on WinDev or WinDev Mobile, either one. So I can run mobile tests as well. So I'm going to, one of the things that, over the years you become an expert, which is nothing more than a form of drip under pressure over certain things. This is going to be my next level of expertise, is automated testing out of WinDev. I'm going to not take shortcuts, and I'm going to push to do this on everything that I'm coding.
This is a good goal, Andy. This is like,
yes,
takes you to the, that's what
it is my March level of New Year's Eve goal.
It takes effort. So I mean, what you've
It
done
does.
is simplified it, and you've broken it down, and I think it's kind of really important.
Yes, Derek, we do set up a test per window. The question was, do you set up a test per window? Yes, each test is for every window and every global procedure. The class is already kind of tested along with it. You kind of capture stuff. It's there if you use classes like I do. But you're going to test every window, and then you can also test the global procedures or any procedures you wrote as well. Just do the test right results of what you want.
So what kind of stuff are you going to test in every window?
Well, okay. From the standpoint here, what I do, I tested the login, I tested the password that I could put in different things, I tested the length. If I'm supposed to have a minimum of 4 characters in the password, then I can test the length of that and say if the length is less than this, test right results, you've error failed. Okay. One of the things that I want to do is take the business rules class that Pete has put together and people have worked on, and actually put in errors and test right results on the business rules class as well. So that way, even when somebody sets up their own business rules for something, I'll be able to incorporate that into a test if I want to. The idea is it's one of those deals. We all don't want to work too much. We all don't want to put, we got so much to do. We literally don't want to add to the pile. Okay, but we can be smart about how we add to the pile. Okay, and this is the way to do it, by putting in the trace and putting the test right results of the trace, by putting in trapping those same things on the errors and stuff like that. The only thing I'm literally doing on the window is doing the typing in of the names and the things and the stuff that has to be there, the mouse moves and stuff, that to test the window itself. Everything else I've already coded in to test, okay, if this doesn't have a value, it's an error. If I put it in the business rules class and I put a business rule class right there that the password has to be 6 characters or more, well, then I'm going to have the test right result error saying, password's less than 6. Now, granted, somebody's got to put that in. Somebody's got to type in a, 1, 2, 3, 4 and try to make it work. But that's part of the screen emulation stuff that you got to do, and that's where the debug recording comes in. The debug recording does all of that. I don't have to write that line by line. So I go through every screen. I did this one. I'm going to go through the next screen. I'll go through every screen doing this exact same thing. Just turn on the debug recording, do my test.
So you can do your edge testing that way, right? So you can.
Right. Yeah. The first set of tests will be me. And granted, later on you may not have 20 or 30 tests on a window. You may only have 4 or 5, but you can just delete the ones you don't want. Okay. So my alpha test is going to be there right off the bat to make sure that nothing just blows chunks on the window. Then I'm going to turn it over to the beta tester. They're going to be running debug on there, and they're going to say, this is right, and this is right, but when I put in these 3 elements, this should say this. This should say, this should be item 29 in here. This should say 29, and it's not. Well, I'm going to get their emulation. I'm going to write in there that if this isn't 29, then it's a test error. I've got a test error. Because that's what they're telling me. It's not an error in the program. It's an error in how they want to use the screen. It's a business rule error. That's why I was going to be taking the business rules class, and updating it in order to use that. You can, Hammett. What would really be great is to incorporate database elements as well, or can that be done? Yes, it absolutely can be done. You can test the result coming back, and I'm going to get into that in a couple of weeks when I get further into this. You can test the result coming back from a select statement that's going out there and seeing that, did I get the right result or did I get any result at all? Okay? So you may not be able to say, did he put in the right value or something like this, but you can certainly say three things. One, did it occur? Did it really occur and work? Number two, did you get the result back that you were looking for? Okay, but that would mean I would be entering data into a database, so I'm assuming that that should be a test. Yes, I've always got a test database, Hammett. Yeah. And that's your test database, and a lot of times it's, you're just throwing data in there, and then you're retrieving and say, and you may put in a test plan there that the first thing you do is insert a customer information and then display it. Go select it and make sure it came back. That everything entered in right. You can do that yourself. So you have a little test procedure that do that. You can expand it as far as you want.
And when you're doing that level of testing, what you're more than likely going to have is a backup of a test database at a known state.
Yeah.
So when you start your full testing for your new release, you restore that, and now you know what the values are supposed to be as your test run through. Prime example would be testing receiving. You receive a product, and then you check that the inventory quantity on the inventory item is the correct value. So, those are the type of really high-end type testing beyond just, interface errors, but true logic errors.
Well, I'm going to have that same thing in here. This is a medical office system. We're going to be doing charges. As the charges go through the process, some of the charges are automated in the database. In other words, the triggers and store procedures in the database actually calculate it. Well, in my test plan, I'm going to insert the charge, and then I'm going to, if in test plan, I'm going to have it run a procedure to go select that data back and make sure that it calculated properly. Okay? I wouldn't do it every time somebody runs the program, but I would have a flag and say, yes, I'm debugging, so I want to get that test data back and see whether or not that it has the values that I expected the database to do. Okay? So I'm going to show you how to do that as well, Hammett. Okay? As we go through this, and as I go through each couple of weeks or 3 weeks before I can get to this, is that I'll get through a piece of that where you see what I'm doing in that area there, and I'll try to cover a lot of the different areas, including reports, and show you this, because literally this is going to be a live product, so I want it fully tested no matter what. Okay? And I'm what they call a lazy programmer. I'll spend 6 months to let things be automated so I don't have to do it again. That's the way it works. Okay? Pete's the same way. So, that's about it in a nutshell. If anybody else got any questions, obviously give me a holler. I do still watch, I am watching the chat room, so don't think I'm not. I just don't get, I'm busy, so I don't get into a lot of the discussions as much. So if you need anything, holler. If you want I'm going to zip up the global error handling login and the class, the error handling class, and I'll give that to Arnold later today. Because there's a couple things I want to change on it. And then you guys can download that and incorporate it in your programs wherever you want. And if you have any questions, feel free to holler. If anybody really wants to get further into the web service to trap the errors on the fly and things like that, let me know. We might schedule up something to do that too. If you guys really want to know how to make that work. I can certainly help you do that, because that's what I've done. Okay. Other than that, if anybody has any more questions, yeah.
Well, when you volunteer to help people, I think it'd be cool if you help people and we record the walking
Oh,
through
no, I
that,
meant
because
a
everybody's
webinar.
gonna
No, I
follow.
meant a
Yeah,
webinar.
yeah.
No, I meant a webinar. No, when I'm talking about doing the web service to trap the errors and stuff, I'm talking about a webinar. I'm not talking about one person.
Okay.
You know, the only thing I'm going to help somebody do is, okay, how do I import this thing? Or how do I make the class work? Well, if I got more than a couple of people to make class work, then I'll run a
Do a
webinar on that
webinar.
for sure. Yeah, sure.
There you go.
No. Now, the only thing we're talking about is somebody say, hey, I got the files. How do I incorporate that into my program? Okay, well, here's
You're
how you
too
do
busy. We're gonna put the little red
it.
red guy up.
Yeah, well, guys, like, yeah. It's been busy, that's for sure. But
Well, that's good.
it's been beneficial. It really has been beneficial. A lot of stuff
Well,
that's
you
going on
need.
has been real beneficial.
Well, you need
Now,
learning
speaking of
time
being
too.
busy, Andy, FedEx just dropped me off a cool water valve
Oh, did they?
receiver radio. Yeah, that's what I'm going
Yeah,
to be doing today.
yeah. I know what you're going to be doing today.
Hey
Yeah.
Tim, do you want to say anything about your upcoming event?
Yeah.
Tim?
And I just integrated in RFID as a reader. Integrated in RFID into WinDev. So I'm reading tags, the RFID tags on the fly, and I've got a big old $1,800 machine FedEx sent to me over here for it. So anyway, go ahead, Tim.
Tim.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, everyone,
Anything?
and thanks again, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just going to say a brief word about the conference that's coming up the week of October the 27th. It's going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. Don't have pricing yet, but it's going to be very close to the pricing last year, and more details are forthcoming.
Yeah.
And
So
you'll
I'll
get
be
some.
there
How many days? How many days are you thinking?
It'll be 2 days of boot camp, 3 days of regular conference, just like last year.
Yeah, and Tim and I have been talking, and I can don't know all the details yet, but I can go ahead and say one of a big portion of my sessions is I am creating what is going to amount to a WebDev e-commerce class, PayPal. It looks like we'll probably be doing UPS shipping, accessing their APIs to process credit cards, calculate transactions. So the attendees of the WebDev conference are going to get a copy of that class, plus we're going to go over that entire class and how it works at the conference. So that's going to show you a lot of working with different APIs, RESTful APIs. PayPal's APIs are, I don't know what the hell you call them. They're kind of all over the map. They're not any kind of a traditional API. They're they're PayPal standard APIs. Yeah, so you'll get a lot of working with different web services, and you'll also walk away with a pretty good foundation for creating e-commerce websites.
All right. Other than
Week
that,
of October 27th in
October
Atlanta.
Hot Atlanta.
That is correct.
It's not going to be hot then, I hope.
No, not in October. Not in October.
Alrighty, that was a good hour, and Andy, as always, thank you, and Pete for chiming in.
Y'all be good or be good at it. That's all I can say.
That's what you say. Take care.
All right.
Everybody have a good weekend, and we'll post the recording and the source up.
All right.
Bye now.